Hello. Today, I am tired. I just got done with my second day of student teaching, and it's going fine, but I have to wake up really early to get to the school that I'm doing it at. So I'm tired, but it is Wednesday, which means chapter 20 is due. So flip in your Bibles to chapter 20, and yeah, I'm still wearing my teaching outfit. So I got to the gym, make dinner, get my stuff ready. My floors are dirty. But you know what? Nothing's as important as my time with the Lord. And that includes reading His Word. So go to Matthew chapter 20. Oh, I didn't bring a pen for my pointing desires. Okay, well, that's unfortunate. Let's get into it. For the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And going out about the third hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And to them he said, "You go into the vineyard too, and whatever is right I will give you." So they went. Going out again about the 6th hour and the 9th hour, he did the same. And about the 11th hour he went out and found others standing. And he said to them, "Why do you stand here idle all day?" They said to him, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You go into the vineyard too." And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last up to the first." And when those hired about the 11th hour came, each of them received a denarius. Now when those hired first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarius. And on receiving it, they grumbled at the master of the house, saying, "These last only worked 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day in the scorching heat." But he said to one of them, "Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last worker as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or do you begrudge my generosity? So the last will be first and the first last." And as Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside, and on the way he said to them, "See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and scribes, and they will condemn him to death, and deliver him over to the Gentiles, to be mocked and flogged and crucified, and he will be raised on the third day." Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came up to him with her sons, and kneeling before him, she asked him for something. And he said to her, "What do you want?" She said to him, "Say that these 2 sons of mine are to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your kingdom." Jesus answered, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am to drink?" They said to him, "We are able." He said to them, "You will drink my cup, but to sit at my right hand and at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared by my Father." And when the 10 heard it, they were indignant at the 2 brothers. But Jesus called them to him and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you, but whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be your slave, even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." And as they went out of Jericho, a great crowd followed him, and behold, there were 2 blind men I'm really struggling now. And behold, there were 2 blind men sitting by the roadside, and when they heard that Jesus was passing by, they cried out, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." The crowd rebuked them, telling them to be silent, but they cried out all the more, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." And stopping, Jesus called them and said, "What do you want me to do for you?" They said to him, Lord, let our eyes be open. And Jesus, in pity, touched their eyes, and immediately they recovered their sight and followed him. Wow. Okay. Back to the beginning. I'm so freaking tired. But I'm gonna read the word. Okay, so chapter 20. We are continuing on from where we left off in chapter 19. Right at the end of chapter 19, we're talking about, who can be saved, and Peter is like, the disciples ask, who can be saved with Jesus? And Jesus said, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. And then Peter is like, oh, well, we've been following you and doing everything that you said, so what will our reward in heaven be? And Jesus is like, oh, well, you 12 will sit on the 12 thrones or whatnot. But then he continues on in 20. He gives us this parable of the laborers in the vineyard that represents the kingdom of heaven, and how all these people are going to receive the same reward. And so it's kind of a little, I don't know what you would say. Not necessarily like a diss, but Jesus is kind of, because Peter asked the previous question, oh, well, what are we going to get? Because we followed you. And Jesus is like, okay, well, you will be saved and in my Father's kingdom, but just because you followed me for a long time doesn't mean that your pride should go up and your ego should get in the way. When newcomers come, like, they're still going to be saved too. You're not of more value just because you believed in God longer. So anyways, it's kind of just Jesus having this little moment to remind Peter to stay humble. But anyways, so with that in mind, back to verse 1. For the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. Yeah. After agreeing with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard. So, just like us, when we're saved, we know what we're signing up for, right? Well, typically, that being saved means you get eternal salvation, so that when you die, you then go to heaven, even though we don't deserve it, but because of Jesus, he allows us to go into heaven and live with God for eternity rather than being separated from God for eternity. But we know that, okay? We agreed to that. And so you have the laborers agree that for a day's work, they're going to get a denarius. He's like, cool. Verse 3. And going out about the third hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and to them he said, you go into the vineyard too, and whatever is right I will give you. When he says the third hour, the typical work day was from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. It was a 12-hour work day. So the third hour would be the third hour of the work day, so 3 hours after 6 would be 9. So at 9 a.m. And then in verse... where did I just leave off? Verse 4, and to them he said, you go into the vineyard too, and whatever is right I will give you. So they went, going out again about the 6th hour, which would be noon, and the 9th hour, 3 p.m., he said the same. And about the 11th hour he went out and found others standing. Now, the 11th hour would be 5 p.m. Okay, there's literally 1 hour left in the workday. At this point, if you're standing, waiting around, looking for work, you must be desperate, because it's like there's literally 1 hour left. Like, that's almost pointless. But if you need that money, you're going to be like, well, 1 hour of work is worth it. I need that. So, Verse 6, continuing on, and he said to them, why do you stand here idle all day? They said to him, because no one has hired us. He said to them, you go into the vineyard too. And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last up to the first. And when those hired about the 11th hour came, each of them received a denarius. Now when those hired first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarius. And on receiving it, they grumbled at the master of the house, saying, these last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat. Also, I forgot to be looking at my notes while reading through this. Okay. Anyways, continuing on. Verse 13, but he replied to one of them, friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last worker as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me, or do you begrudge my generosity? So, literally from the start, the what do you call it? The master of the vineyard? Yeah, master of the house made that had told them, okay, if you work for me for the day, I'm going to give you a denarius. They knew the entire time what they earned. And then they're upset because the master chose to be generous to the people that didn't work a full day, but he still gave them the full day's wages, a denarius. And this is just a picture for the seasoned Christians, old believers, whatever you want to call them, that just because you're seasoned, you've been following God a while and whatnot, does not mean that you are of more value than a new Christian. Literally, verse 10 says, now when those hired first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them received a denarius. And on receiving it, they grumbled at the master of the house, saying, these last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat. Literally, they said, you have made them equal with us. So they feel that they should be higher, that they're better than the other workers. And so as a Christian, when we hear this parable, it's not about our time as a Christian that gives us value, because no matter how long we live on earth, we're all imperfect. Like, time is not going to make us any less imperfect. So, yeah, basically, just because you've been believing a long time does not mean that God values you more than a new believer, because both of you are imperfect. Both of you are saved by faith in Jesus, who died on the cross for you because of both of your guys' sins. Yeah. Amazing. Nothing too crazy. But also in verse 12, when the workers that work the whole day say, you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat. Again, they knew from the start that they were going to work the entire day. And part of that, they knew that you're working during the day. It's going to be hot and be uncomfortable. Just as when we follow Jesus, and we've been following for a long time, we grumble and get upset when we face difficulties, whether it's persecution or whatever. It's like, bro, literally you knew from the start. Like, Jesus is very clear in this lovely writing that we have to reference that people are not going to like you, and that you're going to have things happen to you because you're a Christian, that your life is going to be difficult and imperfect. And so to be like, oh, well, I had to do all this stuff, is like, cool, you signed up for it. Like, no one said that just because you're a Christian that life's going to be freaking roses and daisies. So, get it together. I don't know. And lastly, for this little parable is, what is it? In verse 15, it says, "Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or do you begrudge my generosity?" Literally, the exact translation of the term, "do you begrudge?" So the literal Greek translation is your eye evil? So if you put that in there, is your eye evil because of my generosity? Which, I don't know, I really like the literal translation, because it's like your eyes are wandering and you're seeing what other people got, and because of this dumb little comparison you're doing, it's making you upset. If your eyes were not wandering to other people and you were focused on what your master's giving you, then you'd be like, oh, thank you for this money you just gave me for the work that I did. But you let your eyes wander. Is your eye evil? And, yeah, I don't know. I just really like that. So, be grateful for what you got. And don't let comparison kill your compassion. Because how good is it that you work for someone, in that case, that is being so generous that someone that didn't even work the entire day got a full day's wage. And like, as we said, the people that were still standing waiting for work at the 11th hour, there's literally 1 hour of work left, but they're so desperate that they need that 1 hour of work. And so it's like, oh, thank goodness that my boss, or whoever, in this case God, is like generous, that he helped them too. He saved them too. So you should be compassionate on other people. But when we start comparing, it just doesn't do us any good. It makes us feel a different sort of way than righteousness. You know what I'm saying? Okay, continuing on. Verse 16. "So the last will be first, and the first last." Like I said, this was a continued conversation from chapter 19. So when we look at chapter 19, right before this parable, it says, verse 30, "But many who are first will be last, and the last first." So again, a reminder to humble yourself, and that your status in heaven is not based on your earthly accomplishments. It's about the heart, bro. So humble yourself before the Lord. All right. Continuing on, verse 17. And as Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside, and on the way he said to them, "See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and scribes, and they will condemn him to death, and deliver him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified, and he will be raised on the third day." This is the third very explicit time that Jesus tells his followers that he is going to be killed and crucified. He also had one other vague time where he told them, when the Pharisees asked for a sign, he's like, "I'm not giving you a sign, I'm not going to give you any more signs except for the sign of Jonah." But the first time that he says that, he doesn't explicitly say that he's going to be killed and resurrected. So you have that little, like under the radar kind of mention, and then you have these three very clear, very explicit times when Jesus says straight up, "Hey, by the way, I'm going to be taken by the Pharisees and whatnot, and then I'm going to be, they're going to deliver him over to the Gentiles to be mocked, flogged, crucified, and he will be raised on the third day." So, continuing on again, verse 20. "Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came up to him with her sons, and kneeling before him, she asked him for something. Now the mother of the sons of Zebedee, James and John, their mother's name is Salome. We know this from from Mark 15, verse 40, and 16, verse 1, that her name's Salome. And also, when she comes to Jesus, she's kneeling. And so we know that she's obviously trying to be very respectful of who Jesus is. And then we get the request. So in verse 21, and he said to her, "What do you want?" She said to him, "Say that these two sons of mine are to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left in your kingdom." Which, I mean, it's a little greedy of an ask, but can we blame her? I mean, Jesus did tell the followers, if you want something from God, just ask. And, but of course, when Jesus tells us, what is it, in chapter 6 or 5, somewhere in the Sermon on the Mount. Actually, it might be chapter 7. Hold on. Let me flip to it. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. And so, I mean, we can't really blame her for at least asking, because if it's not part of God's will, then he's just going to tell you no. He's going to give you an answer regardless. It just might not be the answer you want. And so, anyway, she comes before Jesus kneeling and is like, "Hey, please, 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 let my son sit at your right and left hand," which as a mother, I mean, you should want the best for your kids. So again, can't really get too upset with Salome. And then, verse 22, Jesus answered, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am to drink?" Now, this picture of the cup we see this throughout scripture in several places, but it basically means like divine destiny. And that, like God's plan, or God has a plan for this person. And so, so Jesus, when he answers, he says, "You do not know what you are asking." The "you" that he uses is plural, so he's talking to both the boys and Salome. And because the boys are right there with her, James and John. So he's looking at them. "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am to drink?" He's like, do you, God's plan for me, do you know what that is, basically? And are you able to, complete God's will? And obviously they don't know what they're talking about. And so we know, because hindsight's 2020, that Jesus was fulfilling God's perfect plan for salvation for us, and that he was going to die on the cross because he lived a perfect life, and because he lived a perfect life and died for us, that he could take our place, because no one else can take our place, because we're all imperfect. So then, so that's he's like, "Oh, can you drink from the cup that I am to drink?" The cup, in this case, because, like I said, it's divine destiny. For Jesus, his, cup that he's drinking from is going to be crucifixion and then resurrection. But in other places where we see this imagery of the cup, which is representing this divine destiny, is in, let me flip. Okay. My first example is in Psalms. Psalm 11, verse 6. "Let him rain coals on the wicked, fire and sulfur, and a scorching wind shall be the portion of their cup." So in this case, whoever's portion of the cup is punishment. They were destined for punishment because of their actions. Psalm 16, verse 5. "The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot." Okay? Their destiny with God. Psalm 75. Let me flip a good chunk. Okay, 75, verse 8. "For in the hand of the Lord there is a cup with foaming wine well mixed, and he pours it out from it, and all the wicked of the earth shall drain it down to the dregs." So, saying that there's a plan, there's a will, there's something in place for the wicked. Okay, God has a plan for the wicked. And Isaiah 51. Oh my gosh. Okay, Isaiah 51 verse 17, which says, wake yourself, stand up, O Jerusalem, you who have drunk from the hand of the Lord the cup of his wrath. So, for them, it's like, oh, you knew what you were doing when you were not obeying God. So, now you have drank from the cup of his wrath. Like, you will be punished. You knew what you did and what would come after that. Okay, there's lots of other mentions of the cup and whatever, but like I said, it's basically just saying, oh, if you drink from this cup, it's like, okay, you're doing this, which is part of God's plan or whatever. Divine destiny, for lack of a better term. Yeah, so Jesus asked them, oh, are you able to drink that from the cup that I'm able to drink? Are you able to fulfill the plan that God has for me? Which obviously is no, but they said to him, we are able. He said to them, you will drink my cup, but to sit at my right hand and at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared for my Father. So he actually tells them, he says, you will drink from my cup. Which we know, obviously, from Jesus, he's persecuted, he's killed. But for James and John, when he tells them, oh, you will drink from my cup. Later on in their life, obviously, they didn't know this at the time, but they would both be persecuted a lot. James was martyred, so literally killed because of his testimony. And John, they tried to kill him. And I think they literally tried to boil John in a vat of oil. And amazingly, they bring him out of the oil and he's unharmed. God protected him. I don't think that's actually in the Bible, but that is recorded, that he was boiled alive and they tried to kill him and it didn't kill him. And so, anyways, clearly, I'd say boiling alive, even if you didn't die from it, is persecution and, drinking from this cup. And, yeah. And then Jesus says, but you will drink from my cup, you will be persecuted, don't worry. But I don't know if you'll be sitting at my right and left hand. You'll probably be in heaven, but, I don't know where you're going to be sitting. Verse 24. And when the 10 heard it, they were indignant both at the two brothers. So, the word that's used here for indignant is the 10 they weren't so much upset that the James and John asked. The 10 other disciples are upset because they think that they're the ones deserving of the right or left hand seats. So they are upset that they asked, but it's more of like a selfish reason of like, oh no, but we want to be the ones sitting at Jesus's left and right hands. Like, we don't want it to be you. And yeah. So then in verse 25, but Jesus called them to him and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you, but whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be your slave, even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So, like I said in verse 24, the disciples are all salty, and they themselves want to be top dog. But Jesus is like, but I'm going to redefine what you think of as top dog. And you are thinking in your earthly accomplishments and standards that you want status and position and to be elite. And that's why you're asking to sit at my left and right hand. But really, if you want to be the greatest in heaven, you need to humble yourself. And your greatest goal should be to serve others and not yourself. He says, you know that the lords of the Gentiles lord it over them, that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. He's like, so you have the picture that, people in authority just, do whatever they want and abuse their power and make everyone bow down to them. Verse 26, it shall not be so among you. So he's saying right from the get-go, that is not how we're doing things here. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be your slave. To be a servant and a slave, that is the lowest on the totem pole for the Jewish people. Okay, a servant was a hired hand, but it's like the lowest of the low for hired people. And then your slave obviously is not hired. They are forced service. Now, I will say one thing about slavery during this time. Slavery existed everywhere. So outside of Israel, obviously slavery was terrible, all that things. And I don't doubt that there were corrupt Jewish people that treated their slaves poorly and whatever things. However, slavery that is, I guess, allowed in the Bible, if that's the right word for it, when it talks about in one of the first 5 books of the Bible in the Torah, it has rules for having servants and whatnot, or having slaves, because if you couldn't pay someone, you owed them a debt, then you would become the slave, right? Because you have money that you can't afford to pay, so you have to work for them. So you are forced to be a slave or indentured or whatever. However, you would be eventually released. You were probably not going to be a slave for your entire life. I think there's actually some differences between what they called slaves that were like people that were kidnapped and forced to be slaves versus people that became slaves because they owed money. And I don't remember the terms. You can do your own research. But the people that became slaves because they owed money the Bible literally says that they were to be released on the year of Jubilee. So like every 7th year or every 50th year, because 7 times 7 is 49. So every 50th year, the year of Jubilee, that you were to release your slave. So even if you owed a debt that you couldn't pay it off and then you were a slave trying to work it off, eventually you would be freed. Like even if you didn't work it off, the Bible told the people, it's like, okay, well, on this year, you're to forgive all debts. So, I mean, there's, just trying to put that out there. But still, obviously, if you're a slave or a servant, bottom of the totem pole. So now Jesus is saying, if you want to be the greatest, you want to be the first, then you need to humble yourself like a slave or a servant, and slaves and servants, what do? They serve others. So you need to humble yourself and serve others. Verse 28, even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So, Christ gave us the ultimate example, is what Matthew's saying, is that Jesus said, this is how you're to do it. And then Jesus was not a hypocrite. He did exactly as he preached and said, it's like, okay, you need to humble yourself just as I'm humbling myself and serving others. I literally am going to die for people that do not deserve it in order to serve them. So, how beautiful. Also with the humbling yourself, I mentioned it last chapter or video, whatever you want to call it. Psalm, what is it? 147? Psalm 147, yeah. Let me flip there. I'm almost there. Okay, Psalm 147, verse 6. Which says, the Lord lifts up the humble, he casts the wicked to the ground. Point blank, period. Okay? The humble are exalted. and the wicked are brought low. Okay. Verse 29. And as they went out of Jericho, a great crowd followed him, and behold, there were two blind men sitting by the roadside. And when they heard that Jesus was passing by, they cried out, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." In 29, when it says they were going out of Jericho, I think it's in Luke or Mark that it says they're going into Jericho. The Jericho that is mentioned right here is not the same Jericho from the Old Testament. At this point, Jericho has, I don't know if it's necessarily moved locations but some parts of the city are split up and further away, so it's not like everything's all together. It's kind of like, oh, well, there's like part of Jericho right here and part of Jericho right here, so you could be traveling between the two parts of Jericho. And from my understanding, I think in the case for Christ, Lee Strobel asked some guy to explain this situation because it seems like a contradiction, but I did not go back and find it because I didn't feel like it. But anyways, this is not the same Jericho of the Old Testament where the people walked around the walls and it's like, Jericho, Jericho, blah, 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 and your walls come down. You know? Okay. Anyways, the blind men are calling out for Jesus. They were probably Jewish because they call out to Jesus, calling him Lord and Son of David. Verse 31, the crowd rebuked them, telling them to be silent, but they cried out all the more, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." Literally, I love how the crowd, like, if you weren't a healthy man in that day, like, no one cared about you. If you're a child, no one cares. You're a woman, no one cares. You're a man, but you're blind or have leprosy, you're lame, whatever it is, no one cared about you. And so Jesus literally went out of his way and cared for the people that were not cared for. And as we see, the crowd was literally telling the blind men to shut up and to be silent, but they had such a strong faith. They knew Jesus could heal them. And so they're like, I don't care what you're telling me. This guy's the only guy who can heal me, and I'm going to be darned if he doesn't. So, verse 32, and stopping, Jesus called them and said, "What do you want me to do for you?" They said to him, "Lord, let our eyes be open." And Jesus, in pity, touched their eyes, and immediately they recovered their sight and followed him. So Jesus sees the people that go unseen, the people that were not cared about, and like no one slips past his notice. Okay, we see that he cared about women, he had women followers, he cared about the children when literally the disciples were the one trying to push the kids away, and Jesus is like, no, bring them here, I will pray over them, I will bless them, like they are part of my kingdom too. He came for everyone. And I love that it says that the blind men started following him immediately. I think some people, if you're new to Christianity, think that there were only the 12 disciples that followed Jesus around from place to place. And you would be incorrect. The 12 disciples are the ones that Jesus called, that he told them to follow them, and they agreed and followed him. But there were other people that Jesus did not necessarily call. He didn't give them like a formal invitation to follow him, but they followed him anyways. We know that there were women that followed him, and it's actually mentioned in, let me see, I wrote it down, in Luke chapter 8 verses 2 and 3. There were at least, well, it says the women that followed him were Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Susanna, and others. So there were more than just 3 women that were following him. And then obviously we just read that 2 blind men started following him. And then I think it might have been Matthew, or it might be in Luke or Mark, where it says that Jesus sent out like the 72 or something like that. And so there were other people besides just the 12 disciples who followed Jesus, which I think is cool. Especially, I was so stoked when I found out that women followed him, because again, women didn't matter during that day, and to be following around like a group of men, especially if you were unmarried, like that did not look good. But they had such faith in Jesus, they're like, no, I don't care about your opinions and what societal standards say. He's the Messiah, and I'm going to follow him. So point blank, period. All right, that is today's episode. So I hope that was helpful and that you have a wonderful day or week or whatever. And if I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.